So I hope Nordic, shout out to Nordic Warrior, buddy. I'm going to use some of your film for this one. I was prompted to do this video by Nordic Warrior and Precise. Shout out to both of my buddies. Andre Ward is one of the biggest frauds in boxing history. He is a coward in and outside of the ring. He's a terrible commentator and just an all-around shit stain on the sport of boxing, okay? This fucking guy should not be in the Hall of Fame. He should have never been considered a pound-for-pound fighter. And he also should have never touched a light heavyweight title. I mean, I don't even know. Nordic pretty much said it in his video about Andre Ward, the more recently one that he put up. But Andre Ward was one of the most dirtiest, cheating cowards I've ever seen in boxing, okay? And the way that Max Kellerman just continuously sucks the skin off this man's pecker every time his name gets brought up. Andre Ward, former pound-for-pound number one. One of the greatest fighters we've ever seen. And it's ridiculous. And then the both of them, after Max Kellerman gets done sucking Andre Ward off, they proceed to suck Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson off. Two also clinching, cheating, holding cowards. Just like themselves. Okay? It's quite pathetic, but I want to go through Andre Ward's shit. I'm not going to make it a too detailed video. The Mikkel Kessler fight, as you're seeing clips of here, Andre Ward should have been DQ'd for excessive headbutts, low blows, clinching. Very despicable performance, one of the most despicable performances I've ever seen in a fight. Should have been clearly should have been DQ'd in this fight. Should have been knocked out of the World Boxing Super Six tournament, excuse me, right then and there, right? Then he went on to do the same shit to Sakio Bika, which Sakio Bika I never thought too highly of to begin with as a fighter, but he went on to do some of the same shit to him. And then everybody says, well, what about Carl? Carl Froch was not that fucking good. People love to talk about the Cobra. His real name should be Carl the Cocksmoker Froch. But anyways, Carl Froch was not that good, people. He beat Jean Pascal, and he beat an older, faded Jermaine Taylor. That's it. That's it. All right? And he did beat George Groves in the rematch, but you know, George Groves kicked the shit out of Carl Froch in their first fight and had one of the worst stoppages I've ever seen in that first George Groves fight. So Carl Froch wasn't that good because people love to talk about how good what a great win that was for Andre Ward. Carl Froch was okay. He wasn't nothing special. But, so he should have been DQ'd in the Kessler fight. Should have been DQ'd in the Sakio Bika fight as well. That means no Super Six. And then on top of that, that brings us to the, you know, after Froch and Kessler and all this, he went on to fight bums in Chad Dawson. Then it brings us, he fought a weight-drained Chad Dawson and got one of the only, if not the only, significant stoppage of his career. And not to mention, he made Chad Dawson drop down and wait for that fight, which was also fucking ridiculous. And then he moved right back up to 175 afterwards. And Chad Dawson was a solid fighter. But, you know, he again, these weren't world beaters, people. In my opinion, they weren't anyway. So, not only was he not fighting any real significant world-beating type of fighters, he had to cheat against them just to get a fucking decision. And not to mention in that entire rundown of the Super Six, he never had to leave Oakland, his hometown. The scorecards were already written out for this fucking guy. And another thing, Gennady Golovkin would have kicked the living shit out of Andre Ward. Okay? But let's just say, to satisfy the racist channels around it, let's just say for the sake of argument that somehow Triple G ducked Andre Ward. Okay? Let's just say which he didn't, but for the sake of argument, let's go that route. Andre Ward at that point was a light heavyweight. Triple G's a middleweight. So how do you duck a guy that's 2 weight classes bigger than you? And like I say, I don't think Golovkin ducked him at all. I think it was more of the opposite, to be quite honest. But even still, how do you duck a guy that's 2 weight classes above you? Which is why even in today, I get pissed off at people wanting Benavidez to fight Charlo and all these other... Nah, bro, you should be fighting light heavyweights. But Andre Ward cheated, had home field advantage his way through the World Boxing Super Series, should have been disqualified against Miguel Kessler, and had one okay win against Carl Froch. That's it, people. Then he fought a weight-drained Chad Dawson, beat up some bums at light heavyweight, meanwhile calling out Triple G, claiming that Triple G was scared of him when a prime Triple G, I think we all logical fight fans out there would agree that a prime Triple G would have leveled Andre Ward regardless of the size advantage. Okay? But let's move on to the big one. Let's move on. Oh, Jesus Christ. Get the fuck off my fucking screen, Dolores. Let's move on to the big one. Kovalev. Okay, in the past decade of boxing, there's a few robberies that stick out to me. One of them being the first Triple G Canelo fight, where Triple G won 9 or 10 rounds and got a draw. Bradley Pacquiao, Horn Pacquiao. And another one that comes to mind, and maybe even is the worst robbery of all, it's in the top 5 worst robberies in the past decade. This first Kovalev fight, Sergey Kovalev completely dominated Andre Ward, dropped him, and somehow lost the decision. He should have never been light heavyweight champ. He shouldn't, like I said earlier in the video, he should have never touched a light heavyweight title. Okay? He was that bad. Andre Ward was so fucking bad, he had to cheat his way against mediocre competition at 168, then had to get a robbery decision win to get a title at 175. This dude should not be in the Hall of Fame. He should not be looked up to as a role model for any of these young fighters. He was a cheating, coward, fucking fraud. Okay? And that's what it is, people. A clinching, elbowing, headbutting Oreo cookie. That's what you have right there, motherfucker. Now, I also want to say this. The second Kovalev fight, which was before the low blows, the multiple low blows, and I forgot to mention the low blows without all those fights. Not to mention the low blows, but the second fight was a little bit more competitive. It wasn't completely dominated by Kovalev like the first fight was, but Kovalev was still winning the fight as far as I'm concerned. Now, Kovalev was winning. He did get caught towards the end of the fight there. And then it was repeatedly hit. While Kovalev was a little stung, he didn't fall down, he wasn't dropped. He was still on his feet, and Andre Ward ran up to him and hit him in the dick 3 or 4 times. And somehow it was ruled as a TKO victory when it should have been ruled a DQ loss for Andre Ward. So he should have, off the rip, without even me going back to watch some of these fucking fights, off the rip, he should have 2 disqualification losses. One against Mikhail Kessler and one against Sergey Kovalev in their rematch. He should also have a 3rd loss due to the first Kovalev fight being one of the worst robberies in recent boxing memory. Okay? So this bullshit about Andre Ward retired undefeated, blah, 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 he's a Hall of Famer and a role model, that's all nonsense, people. This guy's a fucking coward. But that really brings me to the point that I wanted to talk about. His whole career was fake, manufactured. He wasn't a good fighter. He's not a Hall of Famer. And another thing that Max Kellerman constantly likes to suck off Andre Ward on, oh, he's the former pound-for-pound #1. Bro, you had a prime Chocolatito in that era. You had an active Manny Pacquiao. You had a prime Gennady Golovkin. You had a prime Sergey Kovalev. You had a semi-prime Nonito Donaire. There is no way in hell Andre Ward should have ever been considered the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world. Not even top 10. Not even top 10. And at this point, Lomachenko also had already won titles in a couple divisions. Usyk was starting to make some... No. He was never a pound-for-pound fighter, should not be in the Boxing Hall of Fame, and he's a cheating, coward fraud. Now, let's get on to Andre Ward's retirement, okay? Because this is something else I wanted to talk about. Andre Ward retired at a very young age of 32, 33. And I know what you're going to say, and the reason he retired is because he's a coward and he was scared to fight the best fighters available to him. The reason Andre Ward retired is because Beterbiev was around, Bivol was around. He had already lost to Kovalev twice, in my and most unbiased boxing fans' rationale opinion. And you also had Alexander the Nail Vosdik out there, who just put Adonis Stevenson in a fucking coma. That's the reason why Andre Ward retired so early, is because he's a coward. He got out of the game because, and I know what the next question will. Well, Marvin Hagler retired at 32, 33. Alexis Arguello, Morales, yeah, but those guys were in wars, and they were actually great fighters, unlike Andre Ward, who fought the best competition available, had back-to-back wars, entertained the fans, and never disappointed. Andre Ward didn't do any of that. He also took minimal damage due to his excessive clinching, which they used to deduct points for back in the old days, his excessive low blowing, headbutting, and elbowing. Andre Ward is one of the biggest frauds, bums, cowards, shit stains in boxing history, and his commentary on ESPN is almost always fucking abysmal. The two redeeming qualities that Andre Ward did was telling Fred Barbershop to go fuck himself. There was another low blow by Andre Ward and an attempted tackle. But the two redeeming things Andre Ward ever did in his boxing career were telling Fred Barbershop to go fuck himself and scoring the Lomachenko-Teofimo fight a draw. Other than that, guy's a bum. Always has been. He's not a Hall of Famer. Was never a pound-for-pounder. But what he was an excessive low blowing, an excessive clinching, elbowing, and headbutting fucking fraud that never should have gotten his hands on a world title due to cheating. Okay? And that brings me to my point that Andre Ward retired due to fear of Eastern European fighters. Kovalev had already beaten him twice. Beterbiev was around, who was a younger Beterbiev at that point. 32-year-old Beterbiev, 31, 32-year-old Beterbiev. Bivol I think he was about to fight for his world title. And you had Alexander Vosdik, who was just put Adonis Stevenson in a coma. The man was a coward. It's that simple. And no young fighter from any country should ever be looking up to this pathetic fraud as a role model. Okay? Now, with that being said, oh, there's one punch in 7 rounds that Andre Ward landed. And they'll replay it 4 or 5 fucking times so it burns into the casual's brain. But anyways, that being said, Andre Ward is one of the biggest cocksuckers in the history of boxing. Please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. God bless you all, and I'll talk to you tomorrow after Dimitri Bivol and Zerdo Ramirez weigh in. God bless you all, and take care.